Robin, the faith-based unit has got a remarkable history, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about how it started and what the idea was.
Okay, well, I've only been in prison fellowship just over 3.5 years. My predecessor, Kim Workman, was very much birthed with him as he moved out from his role in the Justice Department and took over National Director of Prison Fellowship. He had this burning passion that faith would really make a difference, and that if we somehow brought men together and focused on their faith, then we'd see remarkable results. So that was very much in Kim and who he was. It took him and a number of members of the board about 8 years to start with the germ of the idea and to bring it through the Department of Corrections. There was a huge amount of resistance, I think, from a lot of people who were very cynical that something would work like this, even though within Prison Fellowship International we had huge experience, particularly in South America, Texas, Canada and a few other places, of this kind of model working. So it wasn't, but it was a unique Kiwi approach to doing something. So eventually, yep, they started in 2003, October 2003, and with a 60-bed unit at Rimutaka Prison. And in those early days, I think when you look back at the history, there wasn't as much community involvement initially. It was very much staff-led. It went through trying to work out who should be there and what the processes were to get people from other prisons. So it took some time to bed down. And then, of course, we had a very nasty incident when we had a murder within the unit, and that really did put it back. After about 18 months, put it back some way. Had to really look at how you built the community within there, how they all acted and reacted together. And then, of course, actually putting together a program manual of what it was you were really going to cover and what the values of the unit were going to be, what its worldview was going to be. I think when I looked at the unit, I could see a number of things that were really good, but I could see a number of things that really were quite program orientated and not so much community orientated. So we endeavoured during that stage to start to say, how could this be a self-sustaining therapeutic community where the men had a lot more say in what happened, the men had a lot more sharing their own faith and building up each other. So we deliberately moved to what's called a therapeutic model during that time, and I think became a very successful one. Unfortunately, in October 2010, Pat died suddenly, and that threw yet another spanner in the works. Yeah, he was getting to a point of, I suppose, having it how he wanted it, and so, you know, for him to be taken very suddenly like that put us into a bit of a tailspin. But no, and at that stage we were just undergoing the evaluation of the unit. So, yep, it was a bit of a hard time to see that the statistics didn't bear out what we were seeing in practice. We had to do a lot of self-examination during that time, but we were quite confident with the men that we were seeing out in the community and seeing how well they were living crime-free, building on their faith in many cases, that we had a gut feeling, you know, we're doing a good job, and so tried to defend that position with corrections. I mean, certainly with those, as with any restructuring and review of the department, as was going on at the time, value for money was the key. Yeah, this was a bit of an anomaly in the prison system, and although there were many good things come out from the report, there just wasn't the really hard numbers. So we then went on an exploration journey as to whether we should do rehabilitation, which has always been the role of psychologists and people like that. We worked with a Christian psychologist the department gave us, looked at our values and our systems, and really felt, yep, we could put together something that met the requirements of psychologists and ourselves, but being a standalone unit, not part of the bigger system, from a cost point of view, was very hard to justify. So I suppose about this time last year, we started to ask God, well, where do we go from here? So yeah, we could look back on, you know, a lot of innovation, A lot of new things tried. A lot of people on the outside who we knew were doing really well. Men desisting from crime, so coming back into prison, but with minor offences, off parole. So yeah, we stand with heads held high and say, yeah, we believe we did a good job in that time. In another age, in another area, had we been starting today, may have had a different crack at it. But yeah, it's not any sense of failure.
You went through 2 administrations. In fact, you had a Labour government and a national government. What was your relationship like with the corrections department and with the government as a whole? Because it's emotionally, at least, it's a very touchy issue, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And the role of faith inside a prison is not something that is perhaps totally understood. More and more now, everyone's talking about what works, and more of us worldwide who are involved in either chaplaincy or faith-based type programming are trying to make sure that we have the evidence base for all of the work that we do, and that way we can prove to authorities like corrections department, justice departments, that it's worth putting the money in here because the results are really worth it. But to do that, you've got to have volume. I mean, that's the other problem. 60 to 80 prisoners a year, matching them up with people on the outside that haven't been through it was very, very difficult. So one of our concerns and big learnings coming out of 2009-10 was we've got to find an opportunity to work with far more people.
Allan Lee talking there with Robin Gunston of Prison Fellowship New Zealand, and they'll be back right after the break. Welcome back, and let's return to our interview with National Director of Prison Fellowship Robin Gunston as he explains to Allan Lee about how the organisation is increasing its focus on prisoner reintegration.
So let's look to what the future is going to hold for units like yours and for the Prison Fellowship. So the unit will close, what will happen? Right,
okay, well the unit will and has already started to cease intaking new people from around the country. So corrections will redesignate it as a particular type of reintegration unit with a particular focus. For the last 7 or 8 years we have supported the prison nursery with our men. You've seen that operation. It's a very efficient, effective operation. That will continue. Men will still get training in horticulture, etc. We are working with the Prison Chaplaincy Service nationally to look at a model that might sustain people still having an interest in their faith and yet still doing work and other prison skills modules. And we have a chapel, we have a library. There are a lot of resources there that men can still use. Which we would want to gift into the system and see properly used all the time. There's an interest in that. So we're hoping that some of the elements of the existing community will be able to be maintained, and we'll work together with the chaplaincy service to see that. So that's the kind of Christian faith bit. And there are several models in other prisons, Paramoremo, Linton Prison, where different models like that operate. So yeah, we think there will still be a strong faith-based presence. Where we see ourselves moving to though is into the self-care side of prisons. We've got to explore that far more with the Department of Corrections. We wanted to find a place across the prison system when we started to look 6-9 months ago, and our board said, look, if you can't pick up the faith unit and replicate it in a number of other prisons, which is particularly hard to do if the department doesn't fully buy into that, then we've got to look for something else that involves the community, takes our core strengths of working in community with churches and replicates it somewhere else. So we were looking for different opportunities, and the core strength we come back to is we're all about community through care, taking people from within the prison at the last bit of their sentence, taking them down to a couple of years after release when they're hopefully living crime-free and contributing parts of the community. So that's what we were looking for. The department said we've been working with them on our target community program, and we signed off on a pilot in August for that to operate in 4 prisons. piloting the process between us as we work more closely together. So they said, well, if we looked for a place in prison where target communities would be the most effective and you could take your skills and things, then self-care units are the kind of logical place to go. So it's early stage. We see ourselves from the end of November moving into a phase of what we call design, where we'll sit down with an almost blank sheet of paper and start to say, all right, here's the outcome we want, reduce recidivism 25% by 2017, it's a government key goal. Right, what's our contribution, given that self-care should really be full of men and women who are the most motivated to change, who have a minimum security standard, they can go out to work every day, their families can perhaps come in and spend time with them, you know, we can bring the community more actively into support. So that's the kind of overarching kind of concept that we're having. These are little pods of units between sort of 16, 24 people in them, so it's a small community to be working with, but overall about almost 400 people are housed in self-care units throughout the 10 different prisons, so it gives us a huge opportunity to gradually spread further into the prison system.
One of the strengths of the way you work is your involvement with local communities and then their involvement with prisoners who are coming out. That's going to be quite a tough job, isn't it, to find enough communities to deal with all these people?
It's interesting. I think more and more we're seeing a sea change. I think a lot of it's about our society and the way it's changing. But we did a strategic review a few months ago just to look at how we kind of assess the church and also local communities and other organisations we collaborate with. So all of us are feeling that actually this is actually a good time to be doing this. People seem to be a lot more conscious about caring for others in their community, outreach into the community. So we think it's an opportune time. So if the tide were against us, yes, it would be tough, but we believe God's prepared the time for this.
So as far as your staff are concerned, their focus is now moving towards working much more in the communities and out of the prison. Yes,
I mean we've renamed where we work in community through care. International evidence that we have seen says probably about 40% of the effect comes from working in the prison and 60% on the outside in reducing recidivism. So that means the natural balance has to be more outside, but you've got to start the journey inside. I mean, the work in the Faith Unit with Operation Jericho and then 3 years ago to target communities showed us that you've got to start all that preparatory work inside. You've got to, the relationships have got to be built then. You can't wait till the day someone comes out and try and make a relationship. It's the wrong timing. So we're going to take all those key learnings and apply them hopefully to programs and services that will start more, really aim to see more people come into prisons, more people picking up their community responsibility to take care of prisoners, widows and orphans and everything else that Jesus commands us to do, and start to work with these people and restore them back into their communities.
That's quite a big change for the organisation. It's a change for you and for everyone. How are you and the others coping?
We've been preparing. This isn't a bolt out the blue. Been preparing for this since 2010. We've really upped our prayer, our discerning of where God would have us. We've been listening a lot more to the needs of prisoners and particularly prisoners' families. So we've taken quite a swing in our ministry. We've realised that you can't just take men and women out of prison and restore them back into their families and kind of hope that everything was normal from when they were last there 3, 10, 17, 25 years ago. Things have changed. At the end of the day, we're change agents. We've got to take the church with us and show them the good, really good feeling and the well done, good and faithful servant when you take someone who's difficult to deal with and their family often as well, and extended family and whānau, and you've turned them around. That's exciting stuff.
Robin, thank you very much and wish you all the best for the new plans.
Good, thank you.